So you have a startup and you want to go global. What do you do? Right? Ruth is going to tell us, right, Ruth?
That's right.
Okay. Ruth has a lot of experience in Phoenix. I'm sure you've seen her out and about. She has worked at GPEC. She now is working at the US Commercial Service, and she's going to teach us about IP strategy in a global market.
Right.
Ruth, kick us off.
Great. Well, thanks so much. I'm going to share my screen. Well, good afternoon. Hi, everyone. As Kate said, my name is Ruth Soberanes, and I'm an international trade specialist with the U.S. Commercial Service, which is part of the U.S. Department of Commerce's International Trade Administration. So first of all, I just want to give a big shout out and thanks to Kate, to Steve Miller, to Brandon Clark, everyone that forms part of the Phoenix Startup Week team for this invitation. Really excited to be here. I have spent the past 4 years or so of my career working with international companies that are wanting to expand to this region, or the other way around, US companies looking to go global. So I've been in that time really excited to see our ecosystem here in Greater Phoenix really grow, and especially this tech ecosystem, to be more inclusive and dynamic. So very excited to speak with all of you and to talk about, this, which is a big passion of mine, is to really help solve the global disconnect that we see with our startup ecosystem. So I'm excited to be joined by my colleague. I believe he's going to be on, Wayne Stacy, who's the regional director at the Western Regional US Patent and Trademark Office, to address those challenges, and also just one of the major pain points which startups face both domestically and internationally, which is protecting their intellectual property. So before we dig in, I'm going to set the stage. I'm going to talk a little bit about why and how innovators and entrepreneurs may consider and approach global business development. So with that, I will get started. So first of all, why is the U.S. Department of Commerce speaking with you today? So the U.S. Department of Commerce promotes U.S. innovation and helps U.S. firms scale globally. So there are 4 main agencies that support this work. One is the International Trade Administration, which I represent, the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, the Bureau of Industry and Security, and finally, the National Institute of Standards and Technology. So a little bit about the ITA. As I mentioned, I form part of the International Trade Administration's U.S. Commercial Service. We are a network of over 1,200 trade specialists that are located in over 100 U.S. cities and in embassies and consulates in about 75 different countries worldwide. And our sole purpose for being is really to support U.S. businesses in succeeding in markets around the world. So we do that in a number of ways, which I will get into a little bit later as part of the presentation. So the U.S. really is the global startup leader in terms of the size of the growth ready universe in the United States. There are over 37,000 Series A plus startups across the United States, which really leads the world. According to Crunchbase, there are major job creators last year in 2020. During the pandemic, actually, they accounted for over 3 million new jobs created. And in terms of unicorns, there are over 600 unicorns and across 15 different industry categories, and the US accounts for about 50% of them, as well as over 600,000 patent applications, which were from last year. So we know that startups are not limited by national boundaries. Often founders really do aspire to build global solutions and design world-changing innovation. So as startups scale, really the entire global market is at the epicenter for achieving this rapid scale. And we've seen quite a bit of change this past year, which is probably the biggest understatement. And really the acceleration of the digital transformation has really forced nearly every company to use technology and adapt their operations this past year. So one fact that I thought was very interesting was if you compare the 1955 Fortune 500 companies list to the 2017 Fortune 500 companies list, there are only 16 companies that appear on both lists. So every single new company, every industry, every sector across the world is relying on technology and having to adapt to this new global reality and ecosystem. So with this changing dynamic, there's really a huge opportunity globally. And I don't know about you, but I've done pretty much zero international travel this past year. But I've never been more aware of how interconnected we are and how much of a global economy it is. So really, if you're a company and you're only looking at the US marketplace, you're really limiting your company from a much larger potential customer base. So more than 70% of the world's purchasing power is outside of the United States. And we see that companies that do go global see faster total revenue growth, they have higher labor productivity, and they see more innovation within 2 years of their start to going global. So in terms of global readiness and the startup phases, so when should you really think about going global? So in terms of the beginning iteration phase, a company is really trying to make their MVP. They're still making a lot of huge substantive changes to a company's business model. This is really the time for education. So it's not the most ideal time to go global, but it's really never too early to start educating yourself. Once you're at that scaling phase and you're ready for a really rapid scale, this is a great time to engage our offices for counseling and to start doing your market research. And then in terms of once you're at the mature phase, your business model is fully validated, the startup has started to grow and experiencing a lot of really sustained growth. This is the right time to start looking for to find partners internationally. So most companies will emerge as ready for international markets at the scaling phase, but we really do see that the potential might not be truly realized until this final kind of takeoff stage. So some of the critical factors for success in international markets, first of all, the level of financing is a critical variable. So it really is important for a company or to start up to be able to pursue international market development. We typically see at least Series A or B. The industry sector is also a factor. So some sector segments really they face different levels of regulation, different barriers to entry and development costs in particular markets. So that is another factor. The experience and global focus of founders. So is the leadership on board? Another factor is the firm's infrastructure and team composition. Are there dedicated resources for international business development? Is there a staff that has a diverse expertise that's really able to support a successful market entry, able to help international customers with their support services, shipping logistics, for example, regulatory and licensing checks, and so on. And so finally, high quality metrics that really accurately portray the strength and the validity of the company's business model is the last factor. So in terms of challenges for startups and international expansion, sometimes it really the first challenge is even where do you start? How do you begin? Another challenge is finding reputable connections and partners. Having a lack of resources and knowledge, and then finally protecting your IP and trade secrets, which my colleagues at USPTO will cover. So how can we help solve some of these challenges? So as I mentioned, the U.S. Commercial Service does provide international business development counseling for companies. So we'll work with you to really help you understand, or for us to understand what your solution is and what your business model is. And we'll try to match our value proposition to the point of where your startup is in the life cycle and also in terms of your funding round. We'll help you understand market conditions in those target markets of interest for you. We'll help you explore channels and potential customers as well. So we offer some customized services. We have some B2G and B2B matchmaking services with pre-vetted contacts. We also can help with VIP brand promotion and thought leadership events in countries worldwide. We can help you do background checks on potential partners. And finally, we can provide advocacy for U.S. companies that are bidding on for government procurement. So let's stay in touch. I'm happy to provide my contact information on the slide, and I'll be uploading this presentation on the platform as well. So with that, I'm happy to pass the mic. I believe we have my colleagues from USPTO on.
Yes, we have Steve,
Okay.
right, Steve?
Oh, great.
Yes, and can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, wonderful. So I'll get started and share my screen here real quick, and thank you for that presentation. Okay, it should be coming through in just a moment. Okay, so hopefully you can see my screen now, and I will go ahead and get started. No, I think that's a great transition, talking about protecting yourself internationally and kind of expanding your market internationally. And I think a key component of that is to really consider what your intellectual property strategy is going to be to enable you to really thrive, both domestically and internationally. And so while oftentimes that revolves around a patent portfolio and building that out, there are other considerations as well that we'll talk about, including trade secrets, copyright, and trademarks and branding as well. So just a quick overview here. What we're looking at is just in Arizona specific focus, the number of patent applications that were granted as U.S. patents assigned with an inventor in Arizona. And you see the growth really just over the last 20 years, more than a quadrupling of patents coming out of Arizona. And that just shows the inventiveness of the state, of Phoenix in particular is kind of leading the charge there. And it shows that even if you're not considering your patent portfolio and how that can protect you, it's likely that your competitors are, just in terms of the raw volume of patent applications that we're seeing. And this is just to look at some of the different technology areas that are leading the patent push out of the state of Arizona. And not surprisingly, perhaps the semiconductor area is by and large the leader in patented technology areas. But there are no shortage of other industries that really punch above their weight in the patent world here out of Arizona. So that's just setting the stage for some of the activity that's occurring locally. And you will have access to all of these slides as well after the fact. So I'm going rather quickly through a number of these, but these will be at your disposal after the presentation as well. So wanted to start just with this high-level overview of what we mean when we talk about intellectual property. I know that's often a nebulous term, and people tend to confuse patents and copyrights and trade secrets sometimes. So this is kind of everything at a very high level that that we mean when we talk about intellectual property. So typically, when we talk about patents, we'll think of what's called a utility patent. If you've ever watched Shark Tank and you've heard the question, do you have a patent on that? They're talking about a utility patent. And this is a typical patent for invention that you would think of. So anything that you would manufacture, or any product that you would see on store shelves, those typically fall under the bucket of what we would call a utility patent. And I think the big takeaway there is that it's a way to prevent others from essentially copying your idea, but it's a limited time protection, right? The patent only lasts for 20 years from the date of filing. So do keep that in mind. But also consider, and I'm just going from left to right here, but also consider a design patents as well as a way to supplement sometimes a product that you're looking to sell. A design patent protects the ornamental design of a functional product. So what does that mean for you? So if you're looking to compete on the visual distinctiveness of your product, a design patent can cover the that ornamental aspect that creates the visual distinctiveness of your functional product. For example, if you've followed the litigation over the past decade or so between Apple and Samsung over their smartphones, at the heart of some of that litigation was the design of the phones themselves, how the phones looked, the exact contouring of the edges of one phone versus another. And so design patents were at the heart of what came to be a multi-billion-dollar settlement. So how something looks and how it acquires its visual distinctiveness can be extraordinarily valuable. So if you're competing on that look and feel and looking to stand out from your competitors on store shelves or on online platforms, design patents can certainly protect you and protect the visual distinctiveness of your products. I'll skip over plant patents in the interest of time, but if you are a botanist and have gotten very creative in coming up with your own breed of plants, there is protection there. And I'll talk just briefly on copyright, moving right along here. Again, copyright protects works of original authorship. So any the written word, the printed word, music, art, sculpture, and perhaps more applicable in today's world, video content. All of that falls under the bucket of copyright. And I think the biggest thing to keep in mind is for copyright, you have to have more than just an idea for a novel, an idea for a song, an idea for a movie. You have to take that idea and affix it to a tangible medium. So for the printed word, that could be as simple as typing it out. For video, that can be as simple as filming it and recording it to physical or digital media. So it's the expression of an idea in a tangible medium that's protected by the copyright. Trade secrets are an interesting form of intellectual property protection in that there is no trade secret office. There is no government office that registers or oversees trade secrets. There's a patent office, there's a trademark office, there's a copyright office that accept those forms of applications, but trade secrets are yours and yours alone, as long as you protect them. So think of the recipe for Coca-Cola as one of the most well-known examples. Coke preserves that trade secrets as long as they take the necessary precautions, meaning controlling which of their employees have access to the recipe, controlling how they share and disseminate that recipe to bottlers and manufacturers around the world that are doing the manufacturing, and tightly auditing who had access to what and when. It's all of those internal company controls that you implement around your business processes, around your your knowledge that you want to keep within your company, whether it's a recipe or a method for conducting business or a method for more effectively manufacturing a product. As long as you keep that internal to the company and keep those tight controls over who has access to what, well, then you keep your trade secret. The flip side of that trade secret, especially when compared to patent protection, is that the trade secret does not protect you against reverse engineering. So if you're trying to keep something secret and one of your competitors is able to reverse engineer your product, you're out of luck if all you have is a trade secret. If you had a patent on that same idea instead, then you would be able to seek an injunction against that competitor that had reverse engineered your product. You would be able to potentially seek damages if they were found to be infringing. So that's kind of the patent and the trade secrets are often part of the same protection mechanism, but have very different applicability in the remedy that you'd be able to receive should someone infringe or steal your technology. And last but not least, trademarks. So think of your trademark as part of your brand. Any word, symbol, design, slogan, even a color scheme that's you want to have uniquely associated with your product, all fall under the bucket of trade secrets. So I'm sorry, of trademarks. So one way to look at it is a trademark is anything that helps to identify the source of a particular good or service. So when you see two golden arches, immediately your mind thinks, identifies the source of that as McDonald's. When you see that visually distinctive red and white Coca-Cola logo, obviously you immediately associate that with the taste of Coke. So even sound as well, the giggle of the Pillsbury Doughboy, the Homer Simpson dough, those sounds are trademark eligible as well, because they are part and parcel of the source identification of the underlying good. And I will note that trademarks last as long as you use them. As long as you're continuing to use a mark associated with a good or service in commerce, you will have access and the ability to renew that trademark every 10 years. So many of the original Coca-Cola marks are still active and still in use. So that's just a very high level overview of intellectual property, what it covers, some of what it doesn't. I'll just talk briefly a little bit more now about patents and particularly internationally, how that comes into play. And everything that I talked about on the screen prior, all of those intellectual property rights refer to the US, the United States intellectual property system. And one of the novelties about IP law around the world is that it's territorial. Every jurisdiction manages and administers its own intellectual property scheme. There really is no such thing as an international patent. If you decide that you need patent protection, oftentimes the very next question is, where do you need patent protection? Do you in the US, across the EU, Southeast Asia, Japan, China, Australia? How do you make that decision? And I'm going to jump ahead. Yeah, I'm going to jump ahead to this slide real quick to talk a little bit more about those international considerations. And what we're looking at here is a variety of international patent offices around the world. So here in the US Patent and Trademark Offices administers the patent system. We have the Japanese Patent Office, Korean Patent Office, European Patent Office, a variety of international offices that administer their own systems. And how much does it cost? How much does it cost to prepare a United States patent application, to file it, to work with an attorney, to get it issued and become a US patent? And depending on the technology, depending on the complexity, and depending on the attorney that you work with, you can be looking in the ballpark of $15,000 to $20,000 or more dollars for a single patent application here in the United States. The overwhelming majority of that is the fees that you'll pay to your patent attorney. Now, if you want similar protection across the EU, across, like we said, Japan, China, Southeast Asia, and you know that each of those countries administers its own patent system, and you're going to have to find a local attorney to work with, a local translator to translate the documents. And each of those is going to be, similarly in the ballpark of 15,000. That quickly adds up. That quickly can balloon to $250,000 or more, just for some of the largest countries in the world. So how do you make that determination? How do you decide that which countries make the cut for your international patent strategy? And here are some things that we'd encourage you to think about. While I have to provide the caveat that I'm not in a position to provide formal legal advice through this presentation, think about the market size of the countries that you're considering. What percentage of your revenue are you thinking is going to come from the US compared to Western Europe, compared to Southeast Asia, compared to Japan? And figure out, hey, if 85–90% of revenue is coming from 2, 3, 4 countries, then that's a pretty good indication that those should be high on your list. And maybe some of the other countries fall by the wayside, and it just doesn't make business sense to file. Think about manufacturing. Where are you going to make your product? Are you going to be able to make it in the US? If so, that makes the decision pretty easy. But if you're going to be manufacturing overseas and then exporting to other countries around the world, keep that in mind. If you don't have patent protection in the country where you're manufacturing, you are at risk of having a competitor copy your product, copy your design, copy your invention in that country, and manufacture a knockoff product in that country if you don't have patent protection there. So the physical location of where you're going to be manufacturing or assembling the product, and think about where that product is going to pass through at various stages of the supply chain as well, and where you might be particularly vulnerable to having someone copy your design, copy your product, and potentially rip you off. So that is a huge part of where you should be thinking about filing as you build out your international strategy as well. Consider growth potential too. I mentioned at the beginning, maybe there's only a handful of countries that is going to contribute to the majority of your revenue, but where are you going to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now? Where is the market, taking you as best you can see it? And how are you positioning yourself in your future growth markets, even if you're not going to be selling there today? And the longer you wait, often, the harder it will be to file a patent application in that country, and to pursue protection in that country. Oftentimes, once you publicly disclose your invention, whether it's in the US or in another country, you are prohibited from then filing a patent application on that invention in another country. Think about that. Any public disclosure of your invention here in the US, and that can be as simple as showing your invention at a trade show, putting your invention for sale, maybe as part of a crowdfunding campaign, or getting it listed on Amazon. All of those things can count as a public disclosure of your invention. And that public disclosure, whether it's here in the US or abroad, often precludes you from filing a patent application on that invention outside of the US. In other words, you have to have the patent application filed first before you then look to sell or otherwise publicly disclose your invention if you're going to protect yourself. So that's not to dissuade you from public disclosure or try to scare you away from selling your product as soon as you can and putting it out there as soon as you can. But it's to say that you really do need to be deliberate about any public disclosure of your invention, particularly as you look to build out your international strategy. So again, think about where you want to file, what countries you want to file, and how to go about filing your application internationally. And I'll talk about that in just a minute. Before you put your product out there for sale, you exhibit it at a trade show, you put it online as part of a crowdfunding campaign, because inadvertently you could have just done quite a bit of harm to your ability to get future patent protection if you didn't have that patent application filed before the public disclosure. So I mentioned at the beginning that there's no such thing as an international patent application. And while that's true, I'll give you the next best thing. And again, it's not an international patent application, but it's the closest thing that we have. And it's called the Patent Cooperation Treaty. It's I believe now over 160 something countries are signatory to the treaty. And what it does is harmonize across those 160 plus countries the requirements for a patent application. So all of the things like what what drawings are required, what fonts and page sizes and file formats and all of those things that us government bureaucrats love to hassle people over. It harmonizes those requirements across multiple countries, multiple jurisdictions, so that you find yourself in the position of having to file a single written application or digital application. And as a supplement, you essentially tack on a sheet that checks the box on each country that you want to, what we call, enter into with that one application. Now, keep in mind, you still are going to have to incur translation costs for assuming your application is in English, for non-English speaking countries, and you are going to have to work with local representatives that are registered to practice in each of those countries. But it's a way to address that early disclosure concern that I raised before. Rather than filing a dozen different applications in a dozen different countries, you can file one application and use that as the springboard to entry into 160 plus countries around the world. So that gets you, that's your one-stop shop for worldwide patent protection, and not having to worry about the risks of early disclosure of your invention prior to filing the application. So again, that's called the Patent Cooperation Treaty, and that's the best way to really secure your place in line, secure that patent pending status on a real global basis. So I want to make time for Q&A, so I'll just briefly talk about a few educational resources that the USPTO offers. We have 4 regional offices across the country, plus our headquarters that kind of covers the East Coast. So if you're not sure where to turn, I represent the Western Regional Office. We happen to be located in San Jose, but I've been to both Phoenix and Tucson many times over the past few years, and we are your local representative of the USPTO. A lot of times people like to have a phone number to call when they don't know who else to get a hold of at the office. So I'd highly recommend, and again, we'll share this with you after the fact, but highly recommend the Inventor Assistance Center. They work from 8:30 to 8 p.m. Eastern. And these are people, believe it or not, that know what they're doing, that pick up the phone. These are all former supervisory patent examiners. I think the average tenure is over 25 years of service. So these are people that are accustomed to dealing with difficult situations, with difficult challenges, and are experts at navigating the bureaucracy, and will help you, again, not provide legal advice, but will help you figure out how to move forward with your application. And so I'll just leave it here with a few handy links. Again, there's our helpline at the top, and a number of direct links to how-to guides on filing your patent application, and some of the things that you can do individually to educate yourself and be in a better position to work with your patent attorney to successfully build your global IP strategy and get your patents issued, so that you can go out, enforce them, and continue to be successful. So I think I'll leave it there and turn it back over to Ruth. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. We have a few questions for the two of you, if you still have a few moments. I'll tee up the first one to Ruth. Steve, maybe you could unshare your screen so we can see both of you for this segment. If you have global ambitions for your company, how do you know when you're ready? Any pieces of advice around things to consider? Ruth?
Sure. Yeah. So it absolutely, I think it goes back to really understanding where you're at in your business. If you're really ready to dedicate the resources and you have the level of expertise within your team to really launch a concerted effort and strategy to go international. As you can now understand, there are so many different considerations. So I think one of the things that is just to continue to educate yourself, work with our team. I'm here locally in Phoenix. We also have an office in Tucson. So we're here to support you and to, again, as I mentioned, understand your business, understand where you're at, and help give you the resources you need. If you're not quite ready to start going global, we can get you educated to the point where we can identify those kind of gap areas and help you providing that information. So
Great. Thank you, Ruth. Steve, this question's for you. We use an attorney for patent filing. However, wondering if filing trademarks, copyrights, et cetera, is easier to file on your own.
It's a great point. And one thing we strongly recommend on the patent side is, yes, do work with a registered patent attorney that you're comfortable with, because the process is not intuitive. And that's not because of the USPTO. It's just there are so many formal legal requirements in the process that going it alone without attorney is a recipe for failure. However, trademark applications are much simpler, much more streamlined, and many people find they can be very successful filing trademark applications on their own. So I'd encourage you to believe it or not, the best place to start for that, the trademark office puts out a number of educational videos that actually walk you through the filing process. So I've heard many people who have a dual screen or a tablet and a laptop set up, and on one screen they're watching the trademark video that tells them how to file, and on the other screen they've got the trademark website up actually filing their application. So you can start on YouTube and look for USPTO trademark filing. And I would encourage you to take a look at some of those instructional videos, and I think you'll find that you can do quite a bit on your own. But if ultimately, if you decide to work with an attorney, you have the ability to do that as well.
Great.
I wonder if I can just add in.
Of course, yes.
Since we're on trademarks too. And Steve, really back to you on this. There's still, of course, the jurisdiction. It's all IP is local, so to speak. But I wonder if you could demystify for us a little bit the Madrid Protocol.
Sure. No, that's a great point, Ruth. And similarly to what I mentioned with the patent cooperation treaty being kind of the closest thing we have to an international patent regime, there's a similar setup on trademarks called the Madrid Protocol that really standardizes across jurisdictions a lot of the formal requirements for trademark filings. So I don't quite have the number of countries in front of me right now, but if as you're looking towards your international launch, particularly of your brand and looking to establish your brand internationally, the vehicle through which you can do that perhaps most effectively is the Madrid Protocol. So again, very analogous to kind of what I had said around the Patent Cooperation Treaty, in terms of standardizing the parts, form, and content of the trademark application itself across 100+ jurisdictions internationally. So it's a great place to start as you look to establish your brand presence internationally. So thank you for bringing that up, Ruth.
We have 3 questions, and I think I can combine 2 into 1. So I'll start with this one. What type of copyright are worksheets, spreadsheets, or website forms?
Sure, I can take a stab at that, and I think a lot of times when you look at copyrights on either websites or content online, typically there's one broad copyright at the bottom that protects the entirety of what's under that domain name. A lot of times people ask, well, every time I publish a blog post or some new piece of information on my website, do I need a new copyright for every single one of those? And the answer is no. The answer is typically that as you have a copyright on the domain as published itself, subsequent content that you add onto that website in the form of data that you're sharing, blog posts, whatever, it typically falls under that original copyright. So it does protect those additive works that you provide later in the process.
Final question. It says, thank you for sharing. How do you estimate the full cost of a patent in the US and globally? And then second, do you have a personal opinion about enforceability of patents in China over the next 10 years? Not legal advice, of course, personal opinion.
Sure, I can jump in and try to answer that. So the biggest cost when filing a patent is going to be the attorney fees. Filing a patent at the USPTO, just the fees to actually file with the agency are probably going to be, a few $1,000s. Where you get to that $15,000 to $20,000 is when you layer on the cost of working with an attorney to help you draft your application in such a way that it's going to, 1, be issued by the USPTO, and then 2, be enforceable. And I think that's one thing I'll leave you with is, that's the biggest differentiator from working with a reputable patent attorney versus maybe one of those invention submission corporations that promises they'll get you a patent for a few $100s. Yes, they may get you a patent, and it won't be worth the paper it's printed on if you can't enforce it, right? So that's where the true value of working with a patent attorney is. They'll understand your business needs. They'll understand why you need a patent, how that fits into your strategic objectives, and they'll tailor the language in the patent itself to give you maximal flexibility, whether you're looking to eventually IPO, to get acquired, to license the patent. They'll tailor it to meet your unique needs. So that's where that $15,000 to $20,000 cost per patent comes out to. The question on enforceability is certainly an interesting one. If I had the answer to that, I'd be working in Guangzhou right now probably. But it's one that has been evolving quite a bit. I'll say, and rather than attempt to speculate, I'll point to the fact that we have a team of IP attachés around the world, and 3 in particular in China, that are really experts on the local market and the movement on the ground in the courts. And so rather than hear from me, I'd encourage you to connect with our IP attachés. We have 3 in China, Shanghai, Beijing and Guangzhou, and they are really some of the most knowledgeable people that we have working on those challenges, and they're your best bet for guidance as you navigate the next 10 years in China and in markets around the world.
Thank you so much for your time today, Ruth and Stephen. We appreciate your expertise, and we wish you well. Thank you again. Take care.
Thanks so much.